there's no point in talking in public about certain things.
Yeah.
Because nobody's interested. Why would I waste my time?
Don't think that. Don't think nobody's interested.
Sri M, a man who seldom talks publicly about his most controversial personal spiritual experiences, prefers instead to talk about how others can best seek their ultimate spiritual truth.
Because also there are more important issues on hand.
Yeah.
You know, that I need to make them move from where they stand and come to a position where maybe at some future date they can see what I can see.
In part one of this two-part series, Sri M explains how he has been taught by great teachers, human and non-human, from this world and beyond, teachings he chooses to keep separate from one another.
So I'm dividing the teachings into two sections. One is what I teach in public, and one is when I talk intimately to people
Yes.
like you on the camera.
Yes.
And his most profound teaching? The path to self-awakening.
When you pursue this path, it's a tough path. The Upanishads have called it walking on the razor's edge. In this path, there are many obstacles, there are many distractions that can come. There's one-pointedness to say, whatever happens, I need to reach this. Whatever obstacles come on the way, I'm ready to handle it, no matter what. That is, I think, the most important thing in this.
Welcome to Souljourns. This interview, Part 2, 2018, was recorded in Burbank, California on August 15th. 50 years ago, Sri M was instructed to remain silent about his most memorable and controversial spiritual experiences as a young man, until it became clear for him to begin sharing publicly his astonishing first-person accounts. With the latest from this internationally acclaimed author, we pick up more on his story now.
Now, you told me 6 years ago that when your children were 8, you received what you called a dream signal to start your public service.
Yeah.
Would you describe a dream signal? Was it just a thought in a dream?
I think it was not an ordinary dream. We have many ordinary dreams every night, but this was more something that stayed with me for 6 days on end. It would never get out of my head.
It was a big signal.
It was very intense and it happened in a very innocuous way. I mean, like one of my friends who was a jeweler in Bangalore, somebody went to him, an old classmate of mine went to him with some jewelry for evaluating or something like that. And he saw this man with a picture of Muktananda or somebody there in his shop. So he said about spiritual matters and he said, "Oh, I have a friend, he's not well known, but he has gone to the Himalayas, he has lived with his master. We few people know because he talks to us." So this guy said, "Okay, so is it possible to catch him?" Because he was a member of the Theosophical Society. This guy said, "Well, I don't know that, but I know his mother and sister live in Bangalore, so he might turn up sometime. So I can ask him to see you." And he said, "What's his name?" He said, "My name." And he said, "Oh, but I know him because he has already come here once or twice, but he didn't say a word about anything." So when I went again, my mother-in-law's jewelry or something I had to give to him for cleaning. He said, "Hey, you never told me about this." "Yeah, I believe you have gone to the Himalayas." I said, "Yeah, but I don't like to talk about it much." Okay. Then he said, "Can we have a talk at the Theosophical Society?" I said, "No, I don't talk anywhere in public. I've never done it." I went back, and then I went back to Maddenapalle. That night, I had this dream where I was sitting in a railway coach, and I was inside the coach, and before I got into the coach, I saw that there was a banner on the train which said the Satsang Foundation. I said, "What kind of Satsang Foundation is this?" Anyhow, I got in. I thought they're taking me to the Satsang Foundation.
Which, by the way, is the name of your current.
No. So that's how it happened. So
In a dream.
Yeah. So I looked out of the window and in the station, I saw the station master and I burst out laughing. Because it was not this normal station master, it was Maheshwarnath Babaji with his matted hair here.
Who you remembered from the age of 19.
Of course. And on top of the matted hair, he had kind of kept a guard's hat, white hat, which was sitting on top in a very funny angle. And no shoes, no footwear, but wearing the uniform. And he had a green light in his hand, which he was kind of swinging this way. I thought, is he showing me some kind of a green light, a signal to go? Yeah. Well, I forgot about it, but when I woke up in the morning, it kept coming. And there was one more week to go to Bangalore, because he was suggesting that maybe if I come on a Sunday, we can have it. I thought about it. 6 days it kept coming back. Then I said, let me, when I go back, I'll decide. So I went back and Mohan said, can we have a talk? I said, well, I can talk to you about the Himalayas. He said, fine, that's great. So on Sunday, I can't remember the date and the year, we had this talk. And I thought it was going to be a small private group in the Theosophical Society. When I went there, there were 100 people in the hall and there were butterflies in my stomach. I don't know what to say. I've never addressed a public gathering. So I said to myself, okay, let me concentrate on the guy sitting in front of me and talk. Forget about the rest. So I talked. Apparently it went on for an hour. And
the rest is history.
Yeah. And then they said, oh, this is great. So can you come back again? So then it started moving. And this Mohan, who took me to the Theosophical Society, was the guy who kept saying, we have to form an organization. And so we started it. And they wanted a name. And I said, I don't want anything with my personal name on it. Nothing. Not even M. So otherwise they would have made it the M Foundation.
So it's the Satsang Foundation.
So
it's a wonderful story. Do you tell that story often?
no.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
These details are important.
Yeah.
They
I
not
don't
only
usually
add credibility to the overall stories, which are out of this world.
I know.
They add weight. They add significance to it. You also told me back then, 6 years ago, when you're on the spiritual path, that when you find teachers along the path, don't ask for cheap things that they have to offer. Ask for the real thing. So, let me ask you, Shriya, what is the real thing, the real lesson that you have to offer that would give us better understanding of why you're here?
That's because it's fairly easy to get cheap things. You know, I mean, when I say cheap things, I mean things which are irrelevant.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to talk about more important things. But if I go to 5 people, the 5 people might be able to do things which I can't do probably. But among them there may be one who really can change your heart, change your psyche. I think that's more important. So I had this good luck that in my youth, at the age of 19, I found this wonderful man called...
He found you at the age of 9.
He found me, but afterwards, of course, at the age of 19. So I had this, a man who, I don't know if he was a man or what, but he was more concerned with changing the heart, to changing one's spiritual content, and not about any small, tiny little things that, you know, everybody can do that. I told you last time, I did something and I said, it's not a big deal. If you be with me for 7 days, I can let you know how to do this. But the thing is to change the heart. There are people who just put their hand like this, and then they keep the hand and they say, oh, this is vibhuti. I mean, you know, big deal, you know what I mean? If you be with me for 7 days, I can teach you how to do this. It's not a big deal.
This is what you did 6 years ago.
I'm doing it again, but I don't do it ever. I'm doing it. Ted is a special man for me.
You've done it at least once before, I know of. I won't embarrass him.
Somebody take this away because I need to wipe my hands.
There is one story that I've heard of you doing it for someone else,
Paper.
and he thought it was very auspicious.
No, it may be auspicious, but it's not so important.
And this, would you call this
Thank you.
half
I won't
the
spoil
equation? I think she wants you to.
Usually for some other people, there are always people with handkerchiefs. I don't have anybody. Okay. Thank you so much.
So if this is not the real thing that you have to offer that you told me back then, what is the real thing? What is the serious, real lesson?
Sorry. And this will remain forever. It's not something that appear and disappear. You can keep it and you'll see it's there after 6 years. But what I'm trying to say is that what happened now was, what came out was vibhuti, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now vibhuti is ash.
Yes.
And ash is where we all go in the end. That's the end. You go to Banaras and look at the Manikarnika Ghat.
And ash does not break down further.
No. So therefore, to understand that this is the end of all life, and to look for something that is permanent, which is our true inner being, which is awareness. And once you touch that, actually you can do anything, but you don't want to do anything because you have no desires left. Because you are in touch with an energy which is difficult to define. In fact, you should be careful that it doesn't go out of hand. So what I mean is, this I found with Maheshwarnath Babaji. He was a man who could, I think if he wanted, turn the world upside down. But no, if I was hungry, he would ask me, either you go and beg for food or I bring food for you. I am sure that he could have produced food at the wave of a hand. I've seen it in urgent circumstances for somebody else, but he didn't do that. So what he did was, with his touch and with his presence and with his teachings, he managed to change my heart and clean it up. When I say heart, of course, you know, it's not the organ that pumps blood. My awareness into something much larger than the little petty little self that we always are concentrating on. I think that is most important. Nothing else. And if you touch that, somebody said this in Jerusalem 1,000 years ago. He said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of the Lord, and the rest shall be added unto you." I have never consciously tried to look after myself, in the physical world, material world, but it happens.
Which reminds me of a question last night. Somebody said, do you have to believe in God to be in yoga, to be on a path?
You don't have to believe in God, you need to find God. You can start with the premise that perhaps it's there. It's easier to accept something, a positive hypothesis, than a negative hypothesis. You don't have to start by saying not there. But if you say not there, then you will have no exploration possible.
I think of atheists as having a stronger faith than perhaps I do. They know of the non-existence of
They
God.
don't know.
I don't think they do.
They don't know.
They would say they know of the...
Think they know. We can think many things. We can think, but it may not fit into the normal definitions that we have made for God.
Yeah.
We have to watch out on that.
I have to watch out on time. I've got 7 pages of questions, and I'll never get through page 1.
Sure.
I heard you say again recently about our search for higher consciousness. And you put it this way, that which we seek is everywhere. So how do we find something that's already here in front of us?
That's the thing. If something was far away and you need to go there, then it's a linear progression. Right from here you need to go there. Same question. What happens if it's everywhere? Not only here but everywhere and here. So perhaps when the mind stops its cravings, stops all the grasping. When you say grasp, which means I'm here and I'm trying to grasp something there, all that ceases and the mind says, okay, this is not the way, let me give up. Because I'm not going to find it through any kind of mental circus. So let me just be. then perhaps you find it. Not when you're trying to reach it here, there, it's not possible. I think when all reaching stops, and when the mind says, this puny little brain cannot understand it, shut up, then something happens.
Tough to get to that level
It's
of
tough. It's
thoughtlessness.
very tough. You have to go through many experiences. It's good, actually.
You talk about the 3 stages of consciousness ever since I've known of you, starting with the book that I've read these many years ago, of waking state, the dream state, the deep state. But you also talk about the other state upon which all of these are built. I'll call it the higher consciousness state. Was that state first revealed to you as a little child or by your teachers, through your teachers?
No, later.
Later.
Later, by my teacher, not immediately after he met me, but after I lived with him for some time.
Maheshwarnath Babaji.
Yes, and he was told, he was of the kind who wanted all experiences to be mine and not his. So he didn't say it's this, he said find out for yourself. He did help me to find it, no question about that. But it was 1.5 years after I met Maheshwarnath Babaji, roughly 1.5 years, that for the first time I had an inkling of what that is. But of course, after I had that, I got this memory that perhaps I knew this before. That's a different story. But in this life, till then, I didn't know anything. Well, I imagined, I tried, but...
So would you equate this higher consciousness with awakening, with self-realization?
It's a little tricky to use the word self-realization, but I would say, yeah, that was probably the starting point for me, because it was kind of a opening of the door.
So it happens by degree.
Yeah, it doesn't happen by itself.
And do you go there, lose it, and go back?
No, you don't lose it, you go progressively up.
So you've been going up for a long time.
Once you catch it, you can't go down. I mean, it's impossible to fall.
I couldn't help but write this down because you talked freely about ego and how everybody has ego and that how you have, and if somebody scratches you on the wrong
Even I
way,
do.
you react to it. I would think somebody going through the process of awakening, higher degrees of self-realization, call it what you will, for them ego would disappear.
No. This is a misconception. The ego will be a good ego.
A good ego.
Positive ego. It's not a negative ego.
Okay.
It's not that it will disappear at death. But
At death, yeah.
till then, you cannot even function if you don't have an ego.
So you need
it may be a shadow of an ego, but it's there, but it's a good one. It's not something that's thinking of harming others, it's not something that thinks negatively, it's a positive ego. That's why sometimes when a person has that, you mistake this guy sometimes to be egotistic, but he's not. He can't help it, it's there, the pure ego shines through.
You talk about the mind a lot. You say, at times, I've heard you say, mind is an illusion. If that's the case, what tools can we use to further awaken us if we cannot use the mind?
I didn't say that the mind is an illusion. As long as it lasts, it's very real. But there are ways and means to understand that in the end it doesn't matter. Really.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't say it's an illusion when it's like I'm sitting here and talking to you. It's the mind and the body both which are in action. This is not an illusion. Yeah, from the ultimate point of view, you might think that because this is happening now and next minute it's not there, so it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different matter. But while it's happening, it's very real.
That helps me understand the follow-up question, which was confusing. You say on the one hand, you make the argument that life is illusory, which I've heard you say many times. Yet on another hand, you say this life is real, but that it is merely impermanent.
That's what I mean. It's not illusory. I would like to correct that statement once for all so that there is no confusion. It's not an illusion. It's impermanent. And impermanent and inaccurate. Our understanding of this world is completely inappropriate, and because we are always looking at it from the colored glasses that we wear of desires. So we really don't see it. The world exists, of course. You can't say the world doesn't exist, but it doesn't exist as we think it exists.
Mm-hmm.
This is important to know.
And how can we possibly know otherwise? I mean,
So, therefore, the world that we know today, everything that we know today, is a result of the data, information fed to us by our five sensor organs, five organs of perception, then processed by our supercomputer and presented to us. This is what we see. We don't see the actual. We see depending on how the senses project it. So, and then the mind works on that projection and sorts things out. So that's what we see. We're really not in communion with this earth. Real earth is pure existence. And what we see,
so it's a figure of speech.
yes,
All that exists
all that
is that.
is
which
that.
is.
It's not a figure of speech, it's a reality. It is that. I'm not saying that something doesn't exist. It exists, but it doesn't exist as we think it exists.
Yeah.
It exists in existence, but not as we project, because we have only the idea that is produced by our sense organs, and which are very limited, and sometimes even misleading. And then out of that, the brain processes out and says, this is my rational framework. I have seen this. A flower is like this. I'm saying, what if there is an organism whose eyes are different? It would see the flower different. It's very easy, common sense. The household fly has a compound eye, many eyes. So it may be seeing the flower as completely different.
Yeah. So it's not an easy question to deal with anybody. You learned Kriya Yoga from
Yeah.
your master.
Yeah.
You initiate people into Kriya.
Yes, I do.
How can you describe them? How can you inform them to practice that effectively while the mind chatters away so much?
Very important points here. One is, when you get initiated into Kriya Yoga, on one hand, you are learning how precisely to quieten this monkey mind, what you call monkey mind. This is one of the things in Kriya, is precisely how to quieten this monkey mind. So when you practice Kriya, it's not as if you're trying to make your mind quiet and calm and free of thought. You're trying to engage yourself fully in a practice which gradually deepens your understanding and goes with it. It's not as if on day one you're able to be free of all this jumping of the mind, or the chatter of the mind. No, but through practice you learn how to find an island in the midst of this choppy sea. It takes practice. But I must also say that when we initiate somebody, along with what we teach, a certain energy goes to the other person, which in seed form sits inside that person and empowers him to manage his mind. So it's important. If you read about Kriya Yoga and it doesn't work, somebody has to give it to you.
So it's not just staying with the practice until it improves gradually. It's what it's also what comes in at the same time. I've never heard it expressed that way before.
Yeah, because we have to plant a seed. It may not be the whole thing, but it will be a seed that is sitting inside and sprouting at its own pace. And it depends on different people. There are different paces. It cannot be at the same time. But people definitely see an improvement.
And in your center in Maddenapalle, your beautiful little estate, ashram, you have a meditation center where I think I always saw somebody in there practicing.
I have a room.
Is it a major part of your teaching? How would you describe your teaching? How would you describe your mission to others? You are a lecturer, you're an author, you teach meditation and you initiate people.
I initiate people only if they're willing to be initiated into Kriya Yoga. If somebody is doing something else, which is not the Kriya Yoga that I teach, and if I find that they're doing okay, I don't try to persuade them and make them take Kriya also. So for me, Kriya is not a mission. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
there are people who don't practice any. Babaji used to ask me this question. Mirabai did not practice any Kriya. The great saint Mirabai. He used to say, "Oh, what Kriya did she practice? Nothing." So don't think you're very special. I mean, it is his way of saying don't get very egotistic, but still the same. And Ramana Maharshi, on the other hand, what Kriya did he practice? Nothing. So I don't believe that Kriya is the only way, and that without Kriya you will not, you cannot move forward in spiritual. I don't believe this. Neither did Maheshwarnath Babaji believe in, nor did Sri Guru Babaji believe in this. But it is a potent technique. And those who are willing to experiment and to take it, once it's given, we do see a marked improvement in our progress. That's, yes.
Yeah. One very related concept from 6 years ago, I remember when you told me that you were sorry to report that you had not yet met any serious spiritual students. Have you met any since then? People who really followed what you have to say and practiced it correctly.
No, correction. They don't have to follow everything that I say. They don't have to. But what I meant by a seeker is one whose only interest is to find the truth. It's difficult to find such people.
That would be a seeker.
A real seeker. Who is not interested in anything else. No paraphernalia. He's not interested. If I tell him, hey, you be with me for 6 days and I'll teach you a trick by which you can produce ash, he's not interested. Says, no, I don't want that.
Yeah. And you made it quite clear.
Because
the softening of the heart that you got directly
I
from
would
your
tell him
teacher.
that even PC Sarkar can do that. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
But then he says, I don't want all that. Then what do you want? I want to be free of the conditionings of my mind, and there is nothing else I'm interested in. I wouldn't say I haven't found. I think I have found a couple of people. I don't want to give names.
Okay. That's fair.
It's improvement.
I would think after all these years, almost
My
70
hope.
years, you found a
My
couple
hope.
of people. One last question. 6 years ago, you also told me you were going to write a book, The Past 4 Lives of M. How is that coming?
Well, I've already written that book. It's called The Journey Continues.
Oh, so you changed it.
There's
That's the one.
6 or 7 lives maybe.
6 or 7 lives. You questioned whether or not if you had past lives about 20 minutes ago. Is that a question mark that's very big in your mind?
I didn't get that.
Do you fully believe that you've had past lives?
Of course. It's not a belief for me. It's an experience for me.
And you were gifted with the insight of knowing
Yes.
about
Yes.
what you learned in those
Yes.
past lives.
Yes. I did very hard work. I hope you, at some point, you read The Journey
I
Continues.
will. I didn't know that was it.
Yes. That's the promise that I kept, what I
Yeah.
told you. And if you read The Journey Continues, you'll see how hard I had to work myself to get to where I stay now.
Well, that's a humbling experience for you that's good for us to hear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, because it's not, some people come and say, oh, in 1 year nothing is happening, so I think I'll go find somebody. I said, please do.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard work. You have to, several lives. But then when you realize, when you come to a certain stage and you cross the gate, then you might figure out that you have practiced in life. You don't know now.
Right. That's the important difference.
Yes.
We just can't draw from that
Exactly.
wealth of understanding that we're not conscious
Yes.
of having experience.
Yes. Yes. Because you don't know. Because we don't know. We can't say it doesn't exist.
I wonderfully enjoyed your talk last night. It was a packed house. People there were enthralled with it as much as I was and my guests here. It's a difference between an interview and a talk, and I apologize for going down so much in some details, but you bring new light. You bring new light that you don't often talk, that you don't always talk about every time you give a
There's
talk.
no point in talking in public about certain things.
Yeah.
Because nobody's interested. Why would I waste my time?
Don't think that. Don't think nobody's interested. Please don't think that.
Maybe. No, because also there are more important issues on hand.
Yeah.
You know, that I need to make them move from where they stand and come to a position where maybe at some future date they can see what I can see. So I try to concentrate on that.
I'll conclude by saying years ago I discovered I was a fence straddler. I knew how little I knew about anything, but I knew there was more to learn if only somebody would point the way. So my wife, Jody Cleary, instructed me, she suggested to me that we start doing these interviews, and they spontaneously went around the world because of the power of Google and YouTube and Vimeo to 150 countries by people who were fence straddlers looking for guidance.
Right.
So this is where so much can be said. Go ahead.
So I'm dividing the teachings into two sections. One is what I teach in public, and one is when I talk intimately to people like you on the camera.
Yes. And some of us are in both camps too.
Yeah. So we need to put them together.
Yeah. So my last comment to you is a question. Just please speak from your most inner instincts about telling others what it is that you would like them to keep uppermost in their consciousness to help them on this path.
If they are on the path, then the most important thing to keep in mind is a one-pointed trust to finding the goal. And to remember that in this, when you pursue this path, it's a tough path. The Upanishads have called it walking on the razor's edge, Surasya Dhara. So, you know, Somerset Maugham wrote a book called The
When I was in the
Razor's
Peace Corps in the 60s, yes.
Razor's Edge. And
Razor's Edge was very influential in people's lives.
yes, and he wrote that novel after meeting Ramana Maharshi. Few people know that.
I didn't know he met him.
Yes.
I knew he was in India, but I didn't know he met him.
Yeah. So, in this path, there are many obstacles, there are many distractions that can come. So there's one-pointedness to say, whatever happens, I need to reach this, I need to understand this. Second, whatever obstacles come on the way, I'm ready to handle it, no matter what problems they bring to me, sorrow, pain, grief, I'm going to do it. That is, I think, the most important thing in this.
Sri, when are we going to meet again?
Whenever you want. I'm always happy to meet you. It came after 6 years. I'm very pleased, very happy. But you can come again, meet me, come to Maddenapalle.
We'll make you come to beautiful downtown Burbank again one day. That's where you are now.
Maybe next year I'll be back.
Good.
Maybe.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Until we meet again.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to all who are here. Thank you. And Ted especially.
Thank you.
Two of Sri M's many books focus mainly on his early life spiritual experiences: Apprenticed to a Himalayan Master, a yogi's autobiography, and Sri M, The Journey Continues. If Sri M's stories intrigue you, especially his encounters with Sri Guru Babaji, Maheshwarnath Babaji, his personal teacher, Shirdi Sai Baba, and serpent spiritual teachers from another planet, then you're invited to watch our first two Souljourns interviews with him, which center on those experiences: Souljourns Part 1, 2012, and Souljourns Part 2, 2012.